And then I would come to Second City and like I could act and I could like really embody characters, so the directors liked me. But in the beginning, I felt like the cast members were kind of like, why is she here? She's not funny. She can't write like we can.
Hi, I'm Gracie Mercedes, and welcome back to Not Blank Enough, a podcast about everyday insecurities and triumphs. In this episode, I'm talking with Tawny Newsome. The biracial actress currently in Space Force on Netflix talks about her rural upbringing, being a Black woman in comedy, and why POCs may not be super into camping. I hope you enjoy this insightful conversation we titled Not Understood Enough. And if you do enjoy this episode or anyone thus far, please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It would really help us get our show to as many listeners as possible. Thank you in advance. Hello, Tawny. Welcome to Not Blank Enough.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. I was just admiring your closet. We were commiserating about small closet sizes and your creative solution.
For those who don't know, I have an office that I converted into a walk-in closet at my house because there's not a lot of closet space here. And, you know, before COVID, it was fine because I wasn't Zooming like 24/7 and no one really saw my closet. But now every time I do a Zoom, I have to go into this explanation. People are like, are you in your closet? Mm-hmm.
I feel like most of the Zooms I see, people are in their closets. Or
Really?
at least anyone doing VO work. I've done some VO work with people from my animated show, and they're all in their closets because it's a nice sound deadening.
It does. It's good for sound. Well, I usually start off on how I know the person I'm interviewing, and I met you on Perfect Harmony. You were a guest star on our show when I was writing on it. You were hilarious, so funny. You played Dwayne's girlfriend, and that was really fun. But that's really it. We only talked like here and there for like a second.
Yeah, I felt like it was like, you know, I was just like finding the other Black people working on that show, like making eyes and being like, okay, hey, what's up?
Yeah. Luckily, I wasn't the only one.
It was a good amount of people, but that's how Timberly and I got to know each other too. Like she and I have so many friends in common, but like had just never, you know, really met, or like we'd met so briefly that it didn't count. So yeah, I felt like that was a cool set. God, what a friendly, fun group of people. I'm so sorry that it's not coming back, but
I know. Thank you. I know it's a real bummer. That show was so fun to work on. It was such a great cast. It was such a great crew. The writer's room was awesome. It was my first writing job, and I got really lucky to be in like a great room and a friendly room. And so yeah, sad it's over.
For a first job, man, that's all you can ask for, right? It's just like good, nice people.
Totally. So I want to get to know you because I don't really know you that well. And
Sure.
That's what we do on this show. You know, the theme is not blank enough. And I like to talk to guests about like that blank and what's specifically that blank is for them and how it's changed or evolved in their lifetime. But let's start at the very beginning. Where are you from? Tell me a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually from Vacaville, California, which at the time of recording is in the midst of horrible wildfires right now. So it's very weird to think about my hometown because I don't normally have a lot of love for it. It can be a very conservative place, and I grew up really rural. I grew up on a horse ranch.
Oh, wow.
None of my parents are not artists or actors at all. I'm an only child. They divorced when I was really young, but they both... Like with my dad, I kind of had like an in-town, suburban, small kind of tract home life. And then at my mom's, I would have this like, you know, up at 6 a.m. feeding chickens and, you know, repairing. If the roof leaked, like she and I were up there when I was 13, like fixing it. Yeah, I had a very hands-on kind of DIY upbringing. But the town itself, man, I didn't even really realize until I left and moved to Chicago, like, what a tough place it is to have, you know, progressive politics, or for my friends growing up there who were queer. Being a mixed person, there weren't a lot of Black people, but because there were a lot of Latinx folks and a lot of Asian Americans, or a lot of East Asians, and a lot of Filipinos, to me it didn't feel overwhelmingly like racially monogamous. It felt diverse, even though I didn't see a lot of me. So it was strange then to move to Chicago and be like, oh, here's a place that more aligns with kind of everything that I am, aside from the outdoorsiness. I was kind of like, the politics and the Black people and okay, all right, I can dig this place.
Right.
Yeah, so I ended up staying in Chicago for like 14 years.
Wow, that's so interesting. So going back to, okay, your upbringing, how old were you when you moved to Chicago?
17, 18, I guess. Yeah, for college.
So basically your whole childhood you were in more of a rural suburban setting, surrounded by some people of color, but also mostly white people. But yeah, I want to get into that a little bit more. What was that like? Because with the kids in school and stuff, were they also more rural, or was it like a city? Was your school in the city, or was it all suburban?
My schools were in the city, so I usually had about an hour and a half long bus ride before I could drive. I know, and it sounds so like I walked 5 miles in the snow each way. But what's funny is that, it's outer Bay Area. It's, it's an hour from San Francisco by car. So to be on a school bus for an hour to get to a tiny town that still isn't that far from San Francisco. It's weird how close it was to things, yet still how remote we sort of were. I'm sure there were closer schools, but I think my schools were like decent, and so my parents wanted me to go there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it definitely, like, the students were a mixture of rural and in-town folk. Most of my closest friends were Filipino. I feel like I introduced a lot of town kids to like rural life and, poor horse people life, because we were definitely like kind of the poor raggedy horse people. So I wasn't like taking them to these glistening stables. I was like, you can come to my house after school, but I have to spend like 2 hours mucking stalls before we can hang out.
I don't even know what that means. What's mucking a stall? What does that mean?
Just like scooping horse poop with a giant rake and putting it in a big bin. It's pretty disgusting, and you have to do it twice a day.
Nice. I did notice from your Instagram you go like hiking and camping and stuff a lot.
Yeah.
And so that obviously stems back from your childhood life and your suburban rural life.
Yeah.
Yeah, were there ever feelings of not enoughness back then? Did you feel like an odd kid being like the horse girl, or was it like cool?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I always was good about forging my own path. I have a friend who says I'm a make my own fun person. I think it just stems from being an only child. There was never anyone to entertain me. My parents worked long hours. So as soon as it was safe for me to be just home alone without a babysitter, I was. So I don't know if I really picked my head up often enough to even feel different. It was almost like a security mechanism to just kind of, have my weird interests and my strange friends and not let other people make me feel like an outsider. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it was when I went to Chicago and I realized like, oh, I am like a very different type of Black person. And I, not that I didn't want to be what I was, but I was like, oh, this is something that's been missing. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have come on this show and talked about being not their race enough. Mm-hmm. I wonder what it was about me at a young age that didn't necessarily feel that way, or is kind of, maybe I'm revisionist historying it and choosing not to see it that way.
Yeah. No, but it sounds like, not everyone has like a shitty childhood. It sounds like you had a really good childhood, and it sounds like because you at least had people of color around you, you didn't feel so much like an outsider. And it's really cool that you were able to be like in this quote unquote city school and be this more country girl, let's say, and feel comfortable in that. And I like the way, obviously as a podcast, you can't see this, but when you describe that, you put your hands up on each side of your face, kind of like blinders. And it reminded me of like horse blinders.
Like horse blinders. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm just in my little world. Everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's really funny. Cool. And so then you went off to Chicago. And so was that for school, or did you move there with your mom?
No, I moved there for school. I went to DePaul for acting. I had never been there before. I knew that I loved being in the city, probably because I did grow up so rural. So as soon as I got my license when I was a teenager, my friends and I were always driving to San Francisco, always getting in very gentle trouble, like nothing too bad, but just always trying to escape to like the big city. So I think I really was obsessed with New York. I had been to New York a few times. I have cousins and family members that live there. So I would go like on a red eye and then like stay one night with my cousin in Harlem and get her to like take me to a bar so I could use my fake ID, and then I'd fly home. And I just thought like, this is the life. This is where I need to be. I'll be this New York person. And so I applied to a bunch of New York schools, and then truly it just came down to DePaul gave me more money than the rest of them. So I was like, well, I'm going to go here and maybe Chicago will be cool. And I'm so glad that I did, because I don't think, given the pace of New York and like the difficulty of being an artist there, I don't think I could have swung it. Like Chicago is a hustler's town, but it is a town where you can make a living as an artist.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. So that's why I stayed for so long. I mean, did you live in New York? I feel like you're a New Yorker.
Yeah. So I was going to say, it's funny. I feel like opposite of you, like completely opposite of you, where I was born and raised in New York City, Brooklyn until I was 12, and then Manhattan, my family and I moved to the city. Like we moved to Lower Manhattan. And then when I started college, I went to NYU for journalism. I didn't think I wanted to be, well, I knew I wanted to be an actor, but I was too afraid to kind of pursue it as a career at that point. But so I went to school for broadcast journalism thinking I was going to be a reporter, and I stayed in New York. And at that point, my family moved to upstate New York. Not super rural. I mean, there definitely are parts of upstate New York that are super rural, but where my family moved, it's this little town called Rhinebeck, and it's kind of more like suburban type of town. And so from that age on, from about 19, 20 on, I have this like upstate oasis that I could go to whenever I wanted to, and had this like such a parallel experience from my brothers and sisters who were raised up there and are much younger than me. And I grew up like going to nightclubs and bars and stuff at way too young of age. And and then they grew up like, I think the first time she went to the city by herself, she was like 19 or something. And I was like, what? I was like 14, like going on the subway and stuff. And so yeah, we had like completely opposite upbringings. And then I also got that opposite feeling of like nature kind of scares me, and being, you know, when it's too dark, I get scared, or like their house has all this land around them. And I always have these, you know, horrific nightmares or thoughts. I'm like, what if a serial killer comes? No one would know if someone just murdered us all because it's so quiet and everyone's so far away. So yeah, I had the complete opposite experience of upbringing.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I get a lot of especially Black and brown people who are like, girl, how can you be in the woods all the time? Somebody's going to come and kill you. You're going to die in the woods. You're going to be our one Black friend who gets murdered in the woods. And I'm like, you know what? I have the knife and I know how to get out of here. I can hike out of here in the middle of the night. They need to be scared of me.
That's so cool, though. I think your page introduced me to another page called Black Girls Trekking. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Which is super cool, because I'm like, yeah, you don't see that enough. Like, you don't see Black and brown girls, you know, out in the wild or out hiking and exploring nature or camping and doing all that stuff. And I feel like it's so cool to introduce that to women of color, especially at a younger age.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, things have been written at length about why, you know, Black people have a complicated relationship with the woods. As my dad used to say, nothing good ever happened to us out there. So it's been, you know, kind of imprinted in our DNA that you're not safe. The further you get away from community and other people who can possibly help you, you know, you're not safe. And so I definitely understand how that trauma gets passed down. And I'm sure because I have a white parent, that was different for me. I also think that I don't know, growing up in Northern California, it's kind of hard to not be an outdoors person. Like, cause especially when you're broke, like there's nothing else to do. It was far cheaper for us to go camping than it was even for my mom to like take us all to dinner and a movie or something. So I think it just was like out of necessity. Even when we had horses, we would take them camping because sometimes you just needed to like get out of the heat. And so we'd like go up to this little horse camp where you take this, it was called electrical tape because when you plug it in, it would actually have like a spark to it. And so horses knew if they touched their nose, it would like spark them. Yeah. But we would take it camping and not plug it into anything. But the horses just knew looking at the tape, like, don't mess with that.
Oh, wow.
So we would make little like corrals for them, and then we'd set up our tent. And then in the morning, we'd get on them and ride. And it was some of the best memories I've ever had.
That sounds amazing. But also, I'm like really like struck by what you said your dad said and the stuff that's been written about that, because that does make so much sense. I've never even thought of that. That's crazy. So, okay, so your mom is white and your dad's Black?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then you grew up mostly with your mom?
Split like right down the middle. I would go back and forth every week. Yeah, for like 18 years.
Holy shit. What was that like?
It was, frantic. It definitely like divided me in half in terms of, I think it's why now I'm both very comfortable in cities. I mean, I lived in downtown Chicago for 14 years and thrived and loved it. And now I live in the middle of nowhere. My nearest neighbor's a mile away and I love it. Like, I think it gave me a duality that I'm kind of not comfortable unless I have both. Like, I always feel like I'm missing something if I'm just doing one thing. talk about not something enough. Definitely not like focused enough. I felt like my focus has always been split. Career, living, family. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, especially being biracial and like, so having that like dual experience.
Yeah,
City,
it's a little on the nose, huh?
Suburban. Yeah, that's really interesting. Not focused enough. I like that. So, okay, so now you're in college, you're at DePaul, and then is that how you got into, because you went to Second City, yes?
Well, I went to DePaul, and I think I should have just known from that school that I should be making jokes, and I should have sought it out, but DePaul is a very serious, it's a very like physical theater, very heightened language. Like people are taking their shit very seriously there, and the education is fantastic. I was maybe a little too goofy for what they were trying to do because I was always in trouble. I was always having to have some meeting with a professor about, me being distracting. It was like I was a child, even though I was a full adult. And I really did learn a lot from there, and I got a good, understanding of how to be an actor and how to just carry myself and things like that. But it was definitely gearing me up for like a life of, like Shakespeare and heightened language and, regional theaters doing Hedda Gabler and whatnot. And when I got out of college, I couldn't quite hack it, probably because I wasn't taking it as seriously as other people. It's not that I wasn't any good. I think I maybe didn't hang on to enough of the discipline. So I would do like one show a year, usually a musical, because I also sang. And then I'd work a bunch of odd jobs. I'd like bartended a lot. I did a bunch of weird, like anything to keep me out of an office. I did every service job, every weird like catering gig, dance troupes that would like dance at bar mitzvahs and stuff, like whatever weird weekend shit I could do.
Amazing.
And then Second City found me because I was doing a reading of a play that my friend had written, and she just like put up a staged reading on her own dime. It was all these Black actors, and it was kind of like a sketch sort of parody show where she was just talking about being a Black actor in Chicago. And I did that, and one of the directors of talent from Second City was like, hey, why don't you come over here and understudy actually Christina Anthony. Do you know Christina?
I don't think so.
She plays Aunt Dee Dee on Mixed-ish on ABC.
Oh, yeah.
She's an old friend of mine, and like literally I got into Second City because she was one of the only Black women in any of the resident casts, and they didn't have any understudies for her.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they kind of brought me in to do that, and then she and I became friends, and I met other Black people who Second City had let in.
Cool. And then, so when did you move to LA, and what was that transition like?
I moved in 2015. Yeah, so I had been in Chicago for like 15 years, and then I moved. God, it's weird to think that it was 5 years ago. How long have you been here?
I've been here like 10 years. I've
Really?
been here forever. Yeah, I've been here forever. I've changed careers a lot. I originally came out here in my late 20s, kind of messed around for a little bit, and then went back to New York and then came back again. So I didn't really start pursuing acting until I was about 31, which people are like, that's crazy, which it is in this business. But I think, I'm blessed with my mom's genes and melanin, and people don't really ask me my age, or they assume I'm younger than I am. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Great.
Yeah.
How old do you think I am?
On Perfect Harmony, I definitely thought you were like 26. I think also because you had said it was your first writing job. And so I was like, oh, cool, this young chick, that's great.
Oh my God, I love you. Yes, 26. That sounds great. No, so that's part of it. I worked in production right out of college at MTV, and then I moved out here originally to act, and then kind of, like I said, was having fun doing commercials, but wasn't really taking acting seriously enough. Like I wasn't in class, and I didn't go to school for acting, so I didn't have any actual training. And so when I moved back at like 30, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to really do this. And so got into every class, and every class they talk about in LA, like Ivana Chubbuck and the Margie Haber and this and that and the other. Landed at BGB Studio, which I love, and then more recently IDSA, which I love. So it wasn't until I would say the last 5 or 6 years that I really felt like an actor. Like I was like actually training and actually in class and actually going on auditions, and now I have really great representation. We actually share one of our reps. I don't know if you know that.
I don't know that.
Yeah, Sam. I'm with Sam as well.
Oh, Sam's the best.
He's awesome. I mean, I'm new with him. I just got with him right before the new year. So in that, I also started writing like 2 years ago. And then, long story short, ended up on writing on Perfect Harmony. So yeah, I've had all these different careers and I've started these careers so late in life that it's really fun and exciting that I get to do all this stuff. I do feel like I'm 26 though. I do feel like this like young kid starting out, even though I'm not 26.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I am also not 26 or anywhere near it. And I also moved here late and felt like, well, this is a crapshoot. You know, I kind of had planned to just like try out a pilot season and just go back. And I did go back, but then I had another opportunity to audition for Bajillion Dollar Properties. And I came out and did that. And then I was like, oh, you know, it was a streaming service. So it wasn't like huge money or anything, but the chance to work with all of those like cool comedy, those like LA comedy people I'd been seeing for years or listening to on podcasts was extremely cool. And it kind of decided for my husband and I that we were going to move here because, I mean, we were ready to buy a place in Chicago. He had a regular old advertising job. I was doing my little 1-2 commercials a year. I was touring with a band. I had finished up at Second City, but I kind of was like okay with not doing a lot of theater and just kind of performing in bands and stuff. And then, yeah, I think we were like, okay, time to buy a house. I guess we'll buy some weird building here and turn it into like a music studio and whatever. And then coming out to LA, we were like, I guess we're moving here and we have to rent forever. This place is crazy. I'll never forget when I tried to show him some real estate listings after we'd been in LA for about a year. We had been looking at 3 flat like brownstones in Chicago, not in a crazy neighborhood, just in Pilsen, you know, an incredibly vibrant, beautiful neighborhood that's struggling with gentrification, but like not in any way like dangerous or whatever. And then I was looking at like an 800 square foot bungalow out here and it was twice the price. And I couldn't, we just couldn't wrap our heads around it.
LA is insane. My mom does real estate in upstate New York. Like New York City is insane too, but upstate is reasonable. And it's just crazy. Like what we paid for this house in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, we could literally have a mansion in upstate New York. Or anywhere else in the country, really, that's not like Chicago, New York, you know, any big city.
Does that make you just feel like royalty every now and then? You're like, we're actually very wealthy. We're actually quite rich. You know, it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I could just move to like Kansas and be super rich.
Yeah, we all could.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, okay, so you get this show. Bajillion dollar listings. I don't want to get it wrong.
Bajillion properties. Yeah, it's like
properties.
A spoof on $1 million listing.
Making fun of, yeah, exactly. And so you're working with these amazing comics. And do you ever feel not funny enough or like, I shouldn't be here? Or were you ever scared?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, straight up in the first season, I bet if people go back and watch it, they can tell that, like, I used to get really frustrated with one of the directors. We had, like, a rotating door of great, funny, cool directors who I'm very close with this person now, so I don't want to put them on blast. But at the time, because I didn't understand... I didn't come up in UCB, so I didn't really understand, like, game. Like, that's not what Second City does. We're more character-driven. And so I was like, okay, I've got a handle on my character. I know how to be funny within that. But, like, that was that set and that show, the whole premise of it was just a series of tiny games. Every scene was a game. And if you couldn't latch onto that right away, they would do this thing where inadvertently we ended up competing with each other because if they had a really cool guest star, like, let's say Jason Mantzoukas or somebody, they would have that guest star come in for a whole day and they would shoot a version of the scene with a different cast member, with a different broker. And only maybe 2 of them would end up in the season. But, you know, he's done like 7 or 8 of them. So it ended up feeling like, man, I'm constantly like, my scenes aren't getting in because like no one's going to outgame Drew Tarver or no one's going to, you know, out goofy Ryan Gall or something like that. I started to get really resentful and felt like this one director especially didn't think I was funny and just didn't like me or didn't understand why I was funny. And it truly was just like I had to unlock that piece of it. Like, oh, they just don't understand how I fit into, I have to make what's funny about me fit into this formula because it was pretty fast. Right. And formulaic. But yeah, it was a weird adjustment where I definitely felt like trash for a while.
That sounds super intimidating too, because I feel like, you know, improv and comedy in general is hard as it is. But then to feel like you're in this environment where you have to be the funniest to get on the show is, oh my God, I just got like nervous belly just from thinking about it. Because I also did improv. I went through the program at IO West, and I was on a Herald team there. And then, IO West closed down. And then I went to UCB, and I had that same thing where I was like, oh, this is so different. It is all about game here. I think iOS is more of a combination of like character and just like grounded work versus this game. And so I felt so not funny when I was in UCB classes. And I went through the whole program, and I even got into like the advanced study. And at that point I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore, because I found myself leaving class or show feeling like just crap. I was like, I'm not funny enough for this.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's still something. I mean, if I'm being honest, like, writing wise as well, I lean towards more dramatic or dramedy. And so even my spec script is not, a half-hour comedy. So when I started working on Perfect Harmony, that was my first comedy job. And I was like, oh, I'm not funny enough to do this. I can't be in a joke room. This is going to be terrible. And, I got used to it and I got better at it, but I definitely was happier when I was in a story room versus a joke room.
Well, now you're like in, so that's great to have that be your first job, because now no one will doubt your comedy cred. And now you can just bring like the heart and the kind of, more story to it.
Yeah, well, I hope that's the case. Thank you, Tawny.
I think so. Well, yeah, because I mean, I have enough friends who run enough weird writers' rooms around town, and like, you don't want everyone to be Johnny Zingers,
Yeah.
You got to have fully fleshed out characters. I went through this at Second City too. I went through being like, oh, I came from like the Square acting school where maybe I was one of the funniest people at DePaul, but that wasn't what anyone was trying to do.
Right.
And then I would come to Second City and like I could act and I could like really embody characters, so the directors liked me. But in the beginning, I felt like, and this is me in my early 20s, I felt like the cast members were kind of like, why is she here? She's not funny. She can't write like we can, because we wrote our own material. So then to like overcome that, especially at Second City, where then I became like, I was on the resident stage for 5 years. I was kind of like one of the matriarchs at that time of it. Mm-hmm. And I did 8 to 10 shows a week, 300 people in the house, every show. Amazing. And I realized that like nothing could harm you. Like even if you bomb so hard, like I had ideas that I loved, thought were so hysterical on the page. My castmates would love them. The director would be like, this is going to go over so great. You put it up in front of an audience or 4 audiences, and when they just sit back with blank stares,
that's the worst.
Yeah, I mean it is deadly, but you do it enough, you're just like, well, I actually didn't pass away, so this is not that bad. So it really like I lost any sense of like nerves, because I'm like, it doesn't matter, you can win them back with the next piece or whatever. So to come out here and oof. I also remember trying to email UCB because I was like, I knew I didn't understand game. And so I thought, this will be really big of me. Here I am, this like grand Second City comedy queen. I'll take a class at UCB. And I emailed them to be like, hey, can I skip like your first level? Because I don't think I need to be in there with like brand new people. And they told me no.
Wow.
They were like, no, we find that when people come from Second City, they don't understand the way we work.
Oh, wow.
I want to print out that email. No shade to the person who sent it. I'm sure it was just like, that's the stock answer you got to give. But they straight up were like, folks from Second City don't get what we do. So no, you have to start at level 1.
Wow. Well, Tawny, I hate to break it to you, but they did let me skip level 1.
They let you skip!
I guess people from iOS do get it. I don't know. I mean, I think it was the time. I'm not sure if they do that now, to be honest. I think this was a while ago. This was about 6-7 years ago. So
this was probably only 5 years ago. Damn, I can't even cry racism. What? They just let you and didn't let me. That's just mean.
Yeah, there was a bunch of us. Actually, almost my whole Herald team. So my Herald team was called Triggerfinger. We were the first team at iOS that auditioned as a team. And so they were like, it's do or die. Either you all get in or no one gets in. And we're like, wow, that's okay. We'll do that. And so we all got, the team got picked up, which was really, really cool. And I was really proud of our team because we were one of few teams that were diverse and had a lot of females on it. And so once IO closed down, or maybe even before that, we, like 5 of us all went over to UCB for classes, and they let us all skip that first level. But
I'm
like, sorry.
I got over it.
You're doing great.
Thanks. I feel vindicated now. I'm like, see, I'm funny.
It's fun. Your most recent show was at Steve Carell. Come on, girl.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Space Force.
Yeah.
How did that all come about? What was that audition process like? Or was it offered? Or how did it all go down?
It was definitely not offered. And it's funny because before that, I thought that Allison Jones, the incredible casting director responsible for everyone's favorite comedies over the years, I thought that she didn't like me because I could never get in with her. So this was my first audition with her.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
I know, and all my friends would be like, oh, but like you were, like I had done some stuff. I'd done Brockmire, I'd done a handful of guest spots. So my friends were like, oh, like she should want to see you. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. My reps constantly pitch me to her. Maybe I've just been wrong for everything else she's ever cast. But yeah, I really thought like, she just doesn't like get what I do, which is fine. Now I'm like, this is becoming a common theme of the episode where I'm like, people don't get why I'm funny right away. That's, after a while it did stop bothering me because I think I proved to myself that I was able to still work even if not everybody understood, why I should be there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this came along and I read the script and I just fell in love. The pilot script was written by Steve and Greg Daniels, and I just felt like I felt so much of that heart from Steve. Like, he truly is the nicest man in Hollywood. Truly a caring person who wants fully realized, like, real characters. And I felt that, and it felt like kind of a Second City, even though I never knew him there, obviously. It felt like because of his roots there at a place that I, owed a lot of, my training to, it felt like, oh, like, I get this style of comedy. Maybe they'll want me. So yeah, it was like 5 auditions probably. And you know what? My test, I only got to do because the UPM for Perfect Harmony let me go.
Yes, I remember that. I remember hearing we do not have Georgia anymore. Like, just getting that in the writer's room, that like code, they don't tell us why, but we all assumed that you got like some great job. We're like, well, she must have gotten some great job. We did get the note that Tawny will not be available after a certain date. And so that's funny. I didn't even think about the connection there that was for Space Force. That's so cool.
And literally on set one day, one of the producers let me go. Like, my reps called and were like, Steve Carell is going to leave this place where they're testing at 5:45. You're in Simi Valley or Chatsworth or whatever the fuck at
Chatsworth.
Like 4:30, and my reps are like, you have to walk out of the door in 15 minutes. I don't care what's going on. And I was like, I can't. Like, you never want to like burden the hand, right? You don't want to mess with the people who've given you the job.
Right.
Your guys' producer was so like, he got it. He understood. He was like, this is a huge opportunity and I would be a jerk to not let you go.
Is that Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I should let you in on a little secret, that when we were thinking about actresses for this part of Georgia, multiple people called out your name. We're like, we should see Tawny Newsome. We should see Tawny Newsome. So that's a testament to like how great you are and how funny you are, because multiple writers in that room knew who you were and were like, she would be perfect. And then I remember seeing the tape and being like, oh yeah, she's perfect. Like, we already knew. I was like, she's great.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's funny because that was my first experience again being in a writer's room. And I had no idea how much influence writers have on TV shows when it comes to casting. I literally had no idea. And they were like constantly pitching people. And I was like, oh, note to self as an actor, be nice to writers. Be nice to TV writers, because they have a lot of power in that room.
Yep, they'll get you in there. Your friends will get you jobs for sure. Do you have a lot of, since you've changed careers so much, do you have a lot of friends who are, well, it's LA. Everyone has a lot of actor friends. But do you have more writer friends or?
No, well, it's funny. I'm trying to fully be like an actor and writer. And so I got very lucky with Perfect Harmony because, it was a 6-month show, but we were done in November. So then I got new representation in December, I think it was, beginning of December. Even before we didn't know we were getting picked up or not, I was able to go out for pilot season. I mean, until COVID shut everything down. But yeah, so it was a good balance to be able to like do both. And with that, I have like a lot of writer friends now because of Perfect Harmony. And my husband's a writer on Family Guy, and he has been for 7 years. So I know all his like writer friends. And then, of course, from being an actor and being in class, I have a ton of actor friends. So it's been really cool. And a lot of my actor friends are getting into writing, which I really love to see, because I think most of them, if not all of them, are men and women of color as well. So I'm like, yes, we need more people of color to write their stories. And so I think it's an exciting time where people are accepting that someone can be a multi-hyphenate and act, write, direct. Whereas I don't know if that was as kosher or respected like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like there were even more jokes in TV and media about like slash people or about hyphenate people where they'd kind of roll their eyes like, oh, actor, model, dancer, whatever. Right. Now I feel like you're right. Like maybe it's being taken a little more seriously because I don't know. In Chicago, everyone was everything. Like no one was one thing because you couldn't piece together a living doing one thing. So it was much more understood and accepted there. And, the price tags on everything are a little lower. The amount you're getting paid for each job is a little lower. So it's like, yeah, of course you do 10 things. Yeah. Whereas out here, it's like, I did wonder if people were kind of like eye-rolly about it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, day one of Writer's Room, I definitely felt like, okay, I'm the actor in the room. And I was going to try to keep that under wraps, except this first day, my showrunner kind of outed me to the room. I was like, Gracie's been an actress I was like, oh, no.
No, don't do that.
don't say that. Yeah, I'm never going to get respected now. But honestly, it's funny. They both help each other because as an actor in a writer's room, I think I had great input on dialogue and I was friends with all the actors on our shows. So then I got to have like more input as far as them as actual people. And, I don't know. I think it was a really fun balance that ended up being advantageous and not so terrible as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I also think like all writers should do it a little bit. Like not to say that, I don't know. I just think they need to know the specific hardships of being on set. Have your whole face and body being like, judged and touched and pushed around, like literally pushed into places and asked to contort yourself in certain ways to know that like sometimes when we can't just like spit out the words, it's because there's a lot happening to us like physically and emotionally.
Yeah. And seeing that and feeling that, I think you're absolutely right. And there was definitely times where I was on set and I would feel it in my bones. Like I knew what an actor was going through and I knew that the writers on set or the producers on set had no idea. And it's just like I think every writer should take acting classes and I think every actor should write. I think they both help each other a lot, to be honest.
I agree.
So I think I'm trying to think, what are we calling this episode? There's been a theme of feeling either not funny enough or almost not understood enough. Because you keep saying how you felt like people weren't getting your brand of humor versus what might be, a UCB way of doing comedy versus a Second City way of doing comedy. But yeah, what feels more accurate to you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, another undercurrent, both of those definitely feel accurate. And another undercurrent of our conversation has been, this split focus, like for both of us, really wanting to truly live in two worlds. For me, while I am a writer, for me, it's less wanting to be an actor and a writer as it is wanting to be an actor and musician. Like I've always pursued this musical career weirdly alongside of comedy and acting. And they don't go together at all. And they really actively fight each other. And I've had to like make so many heartbreaking decisions about gigs I've had to turn down. Usually music gigs I have to turn down because TV work pays better. Yeah, there is something about not one thing enough. Like,
yeah.
Or like you were talking about being, worried about being not respected because you're doing this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that too where like I almost feel like sometimes my reps, not my reps now, the ones we share especially, are great. I love my team so much. But before I would get a little bit of like, well, why don't you just write a pilot? You should just write a pilot. And I was like, I don't want to. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it.
I want to write a song instead.
Yeah, I'll write a whole album. Here, I wrote you a whole album. How about that? And they're like, cool, we don't know what to do with this. Please write us a star vehicle for you.
Yeah. Wait, tell me more about your music because I did hear a little bit of it online when I was, Googling you before this.
Yes. Well, thank you for the Googles. I've just been in weird, like, little musician collectives that started in Chicago, obviously, with some punks that turned into kind of folky, like weird indie folks. I sang with this guy named John Langford for a long time, still do, but he lives there. I live here. Put out a bunch of records with him under his various like project names. It was kind of this like roving collective. We did one album with this Aboriginal dude who's called Black Elvis down in Australia. His name is Roger Knox. And yeah, they sing all these like country tunes that are just so hauntingly beautiful, like traditional old, you know, like Loretta Lynn style, Woody Guthrie style country. They're all about, you know, all their woe is me's in the lyrics are about issues that plague Black people in Australia. So I was kind of brought into that group to kind of like back up Roger and sing songs with them. And then John and I kept making records with his little punk folky outfit. And then when I moved here, John and my good friend Bethany Thomas, who I had met doing musicals, they got this opportunity to make a record down in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. So we went down there and played with like all the original soul session people and made a weird kind of Southern record. And now I'm like, I built my studio, and because of COVID, I've just had like tons of time to work on truly what I think like my sound is, which kind of lives in that like still very like a little bit punky, but kind of like a 90s rock, like yeah, I like to think of it like if Black people were fronting like Veruca Salt.
Which is like perfect. That's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where you are this like split person in a weird way, like in the best way. Like you have this, the biracial thing, the suburban versus city thing, the, you know, musician versus actor thing. There is like a split thing within each of your aspects of life and living.
Yeah. So I guess the recap is like not one thing enough, not whole enough. Yeah, I'm constantly like trying to do two things at once or multiple things at once.
Yeah, I really like that. I wanted to touch on that a little bit too, because I do think as a woman of color, we can be put in different categories or lanes, that this is the kind of music you're supposed to like and this is the kind of thing you're supposed to do. And then if you don't, you're not Black enough, or you're not, you know, X, Y, or Z enough, or you're maybe too white, you know, and so that can be super frustrating. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have 1,000 and I won't bore you with all of them. But yeah, I mean, the singing thing has been a real, I mean, just me having to tell people like, I don't riff. I don't do runs. Like, that's not the type of voice I am. I grew up singing in rock bands, and like, yes, I can belt and I have a big loud sound, but you're not getting these like what you think of as a Black woman, like riffing and running all over the place. That's just not how my voice works. Also, my friend Bethany and I, you know, we made this weird Southern rock record in Muscle Shoals, which is a town with like, you know, 70, 80 years of history of like some of the greatest soul records in existence came out of this, you know, 8,000 person town. And when we show up there with an album that we've co-written and are co-fronting with this other white guy who has this long career in punk, they immediately set up a shared microphone, like a figure eight style microphone that we are meant to sing into.
Backup.
Yep. And
singers?
It literally takes you like arguing with these really well-meaning like 19-year-old Alabama gearhead boys to just be like, I know this is strange. I know this is different for you. I promise you we are singing leads. Like, I have a whole song I sing by myself. Like, we literally have to break out the tracking list and be like, see on this song, she's not singing on this song because I'm the, you know.
Wow.
And it's really just fighting people's biases about that. Or like when I tell them about this album that she and I are putting out, this kind of Veruca Salty, White Stripesy thing, having to tell people like, no, it's not R&B. No, it's not. Yeah, I did hear Solange's out. Yeah, it was beautiful. No, it's its own thing.
Oh, that's so frustrating. And I bet you got a bit of that too in improv, because improv is a predominantly, you know, white male at that scene. And so to be not only a female, to be a Black female, to be a beautiful Black female, because I also think people have a stereotype or a bias, like if you're pretty, you can't be funny. So battling against all those things as well.
Yeah, again, it's like they don't know why you're funny, or they don't get how you can be funny if you don't fit into what they think would be funny about you. Like, and you know, a lot of that is because media and TV for so long, up until maybe like 6 years ago, really just kind of showed Black women maybe two ways. You know, we had Pam, we had Tisha Campbell, and then we had like moms, you know, then we had like the Jeffersons. So there wasn't a lot of room to be like, well, maybe I'm a weird, like, I don't know, country person. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure you got the same thing too. People just in improv trying to decide for you what type of Black woman you are.
Yeah, definitely. All the time.
Yeah.
I think the same thing happens with auditioning at times. I haven't had that issue now, again, with our wonderful shared reps. But before I definitely did, where it's like drug dealer, prostitute, hooker number 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's like, be more urban, be more black, be more whatever. And that would just make my skin crawl. And it only happened when I first moved out to LA and I was young and naive and dumb and didn't know how to stand up for myself. And now things have definitely evolved and changed, I think, within the business and for myself. But there was definitely a time where I was just like, oh, come on. Can we not do this?
Which is wild telling you, someone who grew up in New York City, telling you to be more urban. Because when they told me to be more urban, I was like, I guess I am a little country. Like, maybe they're right.
Oh my God, that's a great point. And I can't tell you how many times in my life and still to this day I get, what do you mean you're from New York City? Not upstate, right? No, I'm like, no. I was born and raised in the city. I didn't leave New York City until I was 27 years old. I'm like, not everyone who comes out of New York has to sound a certain way. Like, I don't understand why you can't think a city person can sound however I sound. But yeah, the biases that exist for sure.
And then can I ask you a question? Because you're Afro-Latina, right?
Yes.
Do you get the same, I think I know the answer to this, but do you get opportunities to audition for Latinx roles with the same frequency that you get for Black roles?
No.
Why'd I even ask it?
I laugh it through. Girl, please. I've talked about this, anyone listening can go back to episode 8, which is called Not Latinx Enough, where I talked to 2 friends of mine who are both actors and both Latinx. One's Cuban, one's Puerto Rican. They are both more stereotypical looking, what we see on TV Latinx. And so they have a very different experience auditioning than I do. We go deep into that. But yeah, I almost never get auditioned for a Latinx role. It's always a Black or mixed or where the ethnicity doesn't really matter type of role. That is something I'm currently actually writing about because I do think it's something that will hopefully evolve where people realize that not all Latinx people look just one way, this like stereotypical olive skin and certain kind of hair, and that we come every single way from very white and fair with blue eyes and blonde hair to very, very Black with, Black, more African features. So the answer is no.
Yeah. I had a feeling. I was like, and obviously I feel like the representation for Latinx characters needs to come way, way up. But the fact that someone like yourself who should have access to both of those equally. I mean, there's not enough jobs for us in general. So you should at least get to, audition for the things that you represent.
Honestly, the one time it came up, then it's the other end of the spectrum where then they only want you to speak Spanish and my Spanish is just okay. And I'm just like, if it's a role where the character speaks Spanish here and there, sure, I can do that. But if it's a role where she is completely speaking in Spanish at all times, and I'm like, no, I'm not there yet. Because I'm also American, and I grew up here. I didn't grow up in Dominican Republic. I grew up in the United States and with a white stepfather, so we barely spoke Spanish at home. So yeah, it's a complicated thing. I think it's slowly changing, but the Latinx representation in general needs to be more diversified. It needs to be the true Latinx experience and not just one kind of Latinx experience.
Yeah. The more roles there are, then we won't have to we also won't have to be so, scrutinizing over the few things that do come out where we're like, oh, that doesn't represent me. And it's like, well, if there were more things greenlit, then, all types of representation.
Yeah. Well, this was lovely. I mean, unless there's anything else you want to say, I think we did a great job at covering your life.
Thank you. I feel covered. Yeah, I feel like there's nothing else about me that anyone needs to know about.
And I do feel like it's either going to be not one thing enough or not understood enough.
I'm good with either of those. Those both feel true. Great. And like my therapist would also give a stamp on those. Like, yes, I concur.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tawny. Oh, and tell us where we can find you. I know you have your podcast, Yo, Is This Racist? But anything else coming up that we can look out for?
Yes. So I have Yo, Is This Racist? Me and my homeboy, Andrew T. We take listener voicemails. It's a comedy show. We try not to get too heavy, although when the world is especially bad, the podcast gets a little sad. It's just tough. Yeah, it is a comedy show. We have special guests sometimes. That comes out every Wednesday. You can get it wherever you get a podcast. And then you can watch Star Trek Lower Decks. I voice one of the characters on that. It's been growing up a Trekkie that it's been like very cool to me to be part of this universe.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a comedy. It's an animated comedy, which is a first for Trek. So that's Thursdays on CBS All Access.
Awesome. Okay, well, and then Space Force is still on Netflix, right?
You can still watch Space Force if you haven't seen it already. I feel like everyone has seen it, which is very strange. It's the first thing I've ever done that like everyone has watched, which has been really nice.
I watched it. It's hilarious. It's so good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tawny.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Blank Enough. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. And follow us on Instagram at NotBlankEnoughPod. Until next time, thank you for listening. Check the show notes for links and info about today's guest. This episode was produced during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and recorded remotely. Our show today was produced by Gracie Mercedes and Dave Hill and edited by Douglas Sarine and Colleen Beasley. Not Blank Enough is a Gumption Pictures production.